I'm back. It's been quite a while. And the truth is, while I've wanted to say a lot of things, and I always want to say things, I'm trying to work on this idea of need, right? What do I need to say? Indeed, that's what I want to talk about in terms of mating matters today, this idea of needs. What do we really need in our partners? We want the world, right? And who we want and what we want can be miscalibrated to a fair degree. It can be, we can expect the world when we don't really necessarily deserve it. We can set ourselves up for failure. And so an accurate calibration of our needs and understanding our needs and understanding how the things that we want might fit into that need structure. I'm gonna offer you a need structure that we've talked a little bit about already, but I want to nail it down a little more for you. Because this is what I've been thinking about mostly in terms of my research about mating and sex and dating and all these words, right? Because we often poetically and hyperbolically use the term need, but let's be honest, what you really need are more basic things. And a lot of things that you might want in the world or find in the world or get in the world might actually satisfy those needs. And so if you're able to calibrate and work out, okay, what is it that I need? What do I need from a woman? Like, for example, I might say that I need a fashionable woman, a stylish woman, an elegant woman, but no, that's not what I need. That's what I want. What I need is a compatible partner. And because I care about fashion, a partner who cares about fashion is therefore more compatible with me. By understanding that what the need is, compatibility, I can better calibrate my choices, right? So the fact that a woman is not particularly fashionable might not be the reason then to reject her if we are compatible in other ways. But if we're fixated on the want level, then we might lose sight of the trees for the forest for the trees. Indeed, most research on relationship psychology, like in particular this idea of what do you want in a partner, a question that we've been asking for 50, 60, 70 years, well more than I've been alive, of course. Freud famously asked, what do women want? So it's not a new question. But we tend to focus on this want issue, right? So I want someone who's funny. I want someone who's tall. I want someone who has a nice job. Want. But you lose sight of the bigger picture, right? What is it that people really need, right? So what you get is this ever increasing clickbaity list style research, which is just, top 10 things that people want. I mean, Cosmo magazine loves this stuff, right? But it doesn't help people understand what they want. It doesn't help them find what they want. It doesn't consolidate research into a consistent framework, a singular or at least unified way of researching these things. And so these people say this, these people say this. And so after all this time of research on, say, mate preferences, we know almost nothing. And I don't think that the public really takes this research even seriously because it just seems like this random collection of things. But if we can boil down what people need, then we might start to understand why they want this thing or that thing. Yeah? So let's start with the needs first, right? And so I've said before that I think there are only 4 needs, and I've since changed that. But I've had to mature in my thinking here because this grant that I applied for, and of course in grants you have to think bigger and you have to say things that are more meaningful. And so I want to get into this need framework instead, right? So what is it that relationship preferences, if you will, what needs do they solve, right? Choices in the world. I choose food, right? Because it solves my hunger problem. Well, maybe the partners you choose are solving some need. Well, so I think one of those needs is arousal, right? If you're not aroused, then you're just friends, right? And so you can be compatible, you can be all the wonderful things, but if you're not aroused by this person and you need that need needs to be solved, then there's no way of going forward, right? So physical things like height, things like smell, things like muscularity, things like the shape of a woman's body. These are physical features that might help solve the need problem. I need to be aroused by this person. Why? Because if you're not aroused, you're not going to have a child. right? You're not gonna be motivated to connect and maybe even deal with all the bullshit that goes on in the beginning of relationships, right? You're not attracted to that person, right? It's that early stage, that fire that you have in the beginning, right? Okay, so that's one need, and that's the need that we tend to fixate on, right? So apps like Tinder serve this, right? It galvanizes your thinking towards physical attractiveness and physical traits, and it puts those first in the process. And why I have always said that physical attractiveness is first, because you're visual, right? You see people. In terms of what's most important, I don't think that that's, and I hope no one believes that physical attractiveness is the most important thing. It just happens to be the first thing that you see. So let's not confuse first with most important, right? This is a common argument I've had with people. When I say it's first, all I mean is literally first in the process, okay? Okay, so physicality aside, okay? Then we have other problems to solve. In relationships, whether it be today or a million years ago, in human relationships, because of the lengthy time we spend together, there are threats within the relationship. And there's this need created of, I need someone who is not likely to, for example, abuse me, kill me, all these types of things. And so we want a partner who's compassionate, generous, right? Kind, all these kinds of things. The next need is about extra relationship needs, right? So the world is a difficult place. You have to get resources, right? You have to solve problems. And so competence comes now, right? Is the person smart? Are they ambitious, right? These things I'm listing are the little indicators that feed into this larger system, right? Then we have the last two, and I used to only think it was compatibility, but I don't think it's only compatibility now. But compatibility is my favorite these days in terms of research, because I think if you start your mate search with, let me find compatible people, like let me go do things in the world and then I will meet someone. Well, if you find someone who's compatible, you're probably more likely to find them physically attractive also, right? It's a better pool to fish in. It's a better pond to fish in. So a compatible person is solving the problem of, we have these extended relationships. We have children who are born very helpless. So having a compatible partner allows you to solve the need of, I need someone who I can work with in the long term. The other one, the one that I'm trying to add now, is character, right? Dependability, reliability. I think it's almost ironic that I didn't think of this one earlier, because most people would call me a personality researcher as opposed to, let's say, a social psychologist. And so the fact that I didn't include character is kind of interesting. But it solves the need in part of this long-term coordination problem. And this long-term coordination problem is rather uniquely human, right? So the other features, the first three, they can kind of be solved in other species, right? So wolves have those problems, right? So getting food for the helpless offspring and having too violent of an alpha male situation, right? So, but the other two, I think, are uniquely human, given the helplessness of our children and not just the length that we stay together with the children, but the length that we stay together potentially for our lifetimes. Now, the idea of humans, moving from relationship to relationship is a very sexy thing, but in our evolutionary ancestry, it was very unlikely that we met 5 people who were compatible with us, who we could have a relationship with. And so there was probably this less of a tendency to engage in these short-term relationships than there was this somewhat flexibility of it, right? We tended to pair bond with someone, and if it worked, we just kept doing it because there's only 5 other people that I could possibly mate with, and I can't stand her, and I don't think she's attractive, and et cetera, right? So we get these 5 needs, right? The needs are, I want to be aroused, I want to feel safe, I want to be protected, like fed, right? I want to, access to resources, if you will. And then the last one being long-term compatibility. I need to have someone who I can work with, right, on a day-to-day basis, not just solving reproductive problems, but solving life problems, right? That we have similar schedules, right? That we have similar views on problems in the world or problems in the household, right? This person is compatible. We can deal with this person. We can work well together. Indeed, what things like Tinder do is they set you up for failure, because by focusing on physical attractiveness, you meet people who you're probably not compatible with, and then you find yourself in this cycle right? Of, well, we get to know each other over 3-4 months, and it turns out we're not really compatible. We don't want the same things. We have similar, different lifestyles. You want to go off to Iceland, and I want to stay here, or something like that, right? Then we work this out, and then we stop, you know? And then we get on the treadmill again. This is how Tinder and Bumble, this is how they say in business, right? But in terms of finding happiness in your relationship and having some long-term stability, it's not the way to go, all right? So there are many individual differences, of course, in how people calibrate these needs and how they emphasize their needs. There's likely ecological differences, right? So if you grew up in a dangerous environment, you might value different qualities than in other qualities, men and women differences, personality differences. If you're, for instance, organized psychologically for casual sex, you're going to put all your eggs in the physical attractiveness bandwagon. But this idea of needs and wants is not all that new, right? Normally, of course, talks about necessities and luxuries. This is a very economics way of thinking about it. But I think psychologists and people on the ground think of these things more like needs and wants, right? And the wants that feed into those need systems are, to differing degrees, satisfying those needs, right? They're indicators, right? This person is physically fit, and that might be an indicator of their competence, but it also could be an indicator of their physicality. And so we have these lower order things, these wants that people have, are not mutually exclusive to one need or another. But as those needs get satisfied more and more, we're more likely to choose that person. And so if we understand how these wants feed into those needs, we can say, okay, well, this person isn't that, but they satisfy my need in another way. Okay. And I think our grandparents' generation were people who were in their 70s, 80s, 90s now. They had a very different attitude about relationships. And so they were trying to find a satisficing level of need satisfaction. But now, because of things like social media, where we have this, often women in particular have this inflated sense of value, they think they should have everything possible. Younger people as well, they have these miscalibration issues. And if you're miscalibrated in what you, in this link between wants and needs, then you might want the world and then you'll never be happy, right? 4 years you're single, 10 years you're single. Why? Because you're not recognizing that, okay, I want lots of things, right? But I need these things. These are the needs are satisficing solutions, right? Okay. Yeah, I need someone who is this. And this person solves that problem for me. They might not solve it perfectly, but that's what becomes important here, solving the needs. So stop fixating on the wants, start fixating on the needs. As I mentioned, these aren't mutually exclusive, as in like they can calibrate up to different things. There's likely to be personalized algorithms. I mentioned already about personality, but there's other things like physiology, maybe cultural context that can matter. So in the end, I hope that under an awareness of the distinction between wants and needs, and understanding that there are probably only a very small number of needs that need to be solved, and understanding how those wants might add up into those boxes can help you make better decisions in your relationship. So that's all for me today. Click, like, all those wonderful things, share, all right? And hopefully I'll say something more interesting and more often in the months to come, okay? Ciao.